This is Ken's Corner Sports Podcast with your host, Ken Judge.
Hey everyone, this is Ken from Ken's Corner, and we have Free Agent Frenzy Part 2. Special guest Shar, all the way from TML Domain, big on TikTok and on Twitter. My cat's deciding to drink some of my coffee. Story game guys, I know this is a regular for the regular guys. Flying some frequent flyer miles. Otis from Sportstalkinthesix. Otis, thank you for joining me again.
Thank you.
Of course, our panel, Phil in Durham, parts unknown, JT up there in Thunder Bay, and George, our Western guy out there in Calgary. How's everyone doing today?
Pretty good.
Great, can't complain.
Okay, we're going to dive right into it, and we're going to start with you, Shar, our special guest, and let's name your winners and losers from Free Agents Frenzy in the NHL.
In terms of winners and losers, it's kind of hard to make a list just because free agency was so underwhelming this year. A lot of the guys stayed with their current teams, and then a couple of guys moved, like Nick Ehlers moved to Carolina, which, you know, they're a team that have a lot of players that are of the same caliber, of the same style of play. So it's hard to say if they really won. I think the clear winners are the Florida Panthers, who got to keep their three big prize possession like free agents. But it's hard to say that they did the best in free agency just because they're $3 million over the cap right now, and they're going to lose a player or two trying to get under the cap. And I don't think any GMs out there, considering how they celebrated their Stanley Cup win, I don't think there's any GMs out there willing to do any favors for them, you know?
Yeah, looking at a three-peat possibly. Boo. Okay, Otis.
I would say I would agree. I think Florida, I know they re-signed their players, but I think they're the winners. To me, the biggest loser for me would be Winnipeg. I thought Winnipeg would be a little bit more active, especially considering they lost Ehlers. A little disappointing that they didn't do more in free agency. There's still time, but as of right now, I don't like what I see from what they've not done. So,
Thank you. JT, you're up.
I have to agree with Florida. They're the only ones that kind of remained steady keel, didn't lose any pieces. And I'm trying to remember who they signed extra, but they've actually picked up another piece. So I'm thinking they're kind of the winners. Nobody else really did much. And to me, the biggest loser right now is, unfortunately, the Leafs. Losing Marner, like a 100-point guy of that caliber, is huge. To lose that, they lost Holmberg. Yeah, he's at bottom six, but he's a good bottom six, consistent guy. And Abruzzesi's gone as well. There's a few pieces that they have lost underneath that people haven't looked at. But to me, Toronto's probably the biggest losers thus far. But like I said, there's a whole summer left. So.
Yeah, I'm going to agree. Obviously, we can all say that the Florida Panthers, with their re-signs, obviously Vegas is a winner, in my opinion, when you got a 100-point guy coming into your team with the guys that you already have. I think Vancouver did exceptionally well, kind of in the Florida Panthers ways, is their re-signs. Bassett, Garland, Demko, bringing in Kane. I know Kane's a hothead and whatever, but I think he's really going to help that team. I agree with Ehlers going to Carolina. That's going to help them. I don't know if it really changes their team ultimately that much. But the losers, unfortunately, I agree with JT, is the Leafs. You lost a 100-point guy. You haven't replaced him as of yet. Obviously, we're going to get into that topic a little bit more in the next session here. But I've also got LA as a loser. They went out and they signed 5-6 guys, and their average age went up by like 6-7 years. They had so many millions of dollars to do something with, and they brought in age over youth.
Thank you. And George.
And again, I'm going to follow the lineup here. As Florida was the bigger winner, and loser, as losing Marner is correct. And wherever Corey Perry went, they're a losing team.
Los Angeles.
LA. Yeah.
Okay, I just want to add this in because of the fact that Florida did sign their three big guns. I think they're supposed to apparently moving off of Evan Rodriguez. Does this change anyone's minds on that? No? Okay, we'll move on here then. The Leafs quiet day. All right, we're just going to go around the same order. Is there a trade brewing for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and what is it that we need to do? What is that trade? Sure.
So when it comes to the Toronto Maple Leafs, I really like what they did actually. I don't think losing Marner was that big of a deal. Losing 70 assists is not going to uh, really hurt the Leafs a lot. Their problem has always been scoring in the playoffs, and Marner just doesn't do any of that in the playoffs ever. I mean, 2 goals in 14 games is not good enough. And I think based on the names that are out there, like St. Louis is dangling Jordan Kyrou, Jack Roslovic is still available, who's a 28-year-old who scored more goals than Marner in a season. I personally think they have $7 million in cap space right now. If they waive Reeves and they put Philip Myers in the AHL, which most probably happens to start the season, they start the season with $7 million in cap space. And they told Mangiapane, if you wait for us to move one guy, which I think is David Kemp, we'll sign you to the contract that you want and you can come play in Toronto. And he didn't want to wait. So that to me tells me that they're looking to move on from Camp and Yardenkrug, which would increase their cap space to $11.5 million. Like that's enough to add a McDavid.
Yeah,
It's not insignificant, and I think a team like the Toronto Maple Leafs who spend to the cap, who have all the resources in the world, I think people are underestimating the weapon that is their cap space right now.
Yeah, you're so right. I agree with you. Otis, I'm going to bring up a name that Shar just mentioned to you during your thoughts here. Jack Roslovic, he is apparently the Leafs might be interested in moving towards Jack coming to Toronto. Your thoughts on that as well?
Yeah, I think would be a good pickup. I mean, at this point in time, I think any solid top six forward would help the Leafs. I'm I kind of disagree with, like, yes, losing Marner is a big thing, but I think spreading out the wealth and getting another top six forward, regardless if it's Kadri or all the different names that we've been hearing, McTavish, all that kind of stuff.
I think it's going to be multiple top six forwards.
Yeah. So I think getting another guy in here, regardless, was good, and I'm glad they were quiet. I'm glad they didn't spend some of the money on Tanev and some of the money that was out there that these players got. Jano got a huge contract too. Those were overpays, and I'm glad Brad said, you know what, I'm gonna take my time here and find the proper top six forward to get in here. So
I think the only real loss for the Toronto Maple Leafs, just sorry to interrupt, is the asset management part of how they went about this off season. Alex Steves got a contract in Boston. Holmberg got a contract in Tampa. And I think if you weren't willing to pay $900K for one guy and $1.5 million for the other guy, which is you got tons of cap space to do it and hold on to your depth, you should have traded these guys for assets, and it's bad asset management.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. JT, your thoughts on what the conversation on is there a trade brewing? And I know you're not an advocate of trading Easton Cowan. What is your thoughts on that? And what would it take for the Leafs to move off of Easton Cowan?
We've got guys in that bottom six that don't necessarily fit the puzzle. Camp is being one. Yarncroc is the other. There's two assets right there. I think those are tradable assets way more than something like Cowan. We already gave up on one in Fraser Minton. We got stuff back in return for that, but we don't want to keep doing that. We don't have a whole lot of those guys left in our farm. So yeah, and in my opinion, anyway, I think you have guys in the bottom six, even Robertson. As much as I like that kid, he may not fit the puzzle. He's just not big enough to play this heavy game. He tries, but he just doesn't have the size to do it. So there's a few assets that I can see moving.
Phil, your thoughts? And Robertson, another name out there, Jason Robertson. Your thoughts on that? Would that keep Nick here in Toronto?
Well, I think that moving off of Easton Cowan at this point, I think would be a bad call. Personally, like the guys have said, we've got other pieces that we can move. We've all heard the rumblings about Kadri and maybe the Nick Robertson, and I think Rasmus Anderson was the other defenseman on Calgary that Calgary is trying to move away from. Maybe this is a thing where you approach, we've had this conversation, Ken, you approach Morgan Riley and you ask him, you know what I mean? If he does have a no trade or whatever, then maybe putting him and Robertson or him and somebody else into this to get Kadri and Rasmus Anderson. But I have heard McTavish. I have heard some of the other guys that you guys have mentioned. Obviously, getting a Jason Robertson would be ideal as to fill that top six scoring role. My little thing on Marner, you're never going to replace Marner's talent. Okay, the guy kills the guy kills penalties. He's on the power play. He's setting up big goals. He's a dynamic 200-foot player. But I think picking up a couple of free agents to take that pressure off of the guys is the ideal solution.
Yeah. And George, you're out there in Calgary, so this one's fit right for you. Would Morgan Riley waive his trade, and would you do that for Nazem Kadri?
Well, I've always been a Marner fan. I've always backed up Marner for a long time, and it hurt me to lose him, but we did get some good people out of it. For Kadri, I'm all in on Kadri. I like Kadri being coming back to Toronto, and moving up to Cowan is definitely what I like too.
Thank you. All right, our next question, guys. Your top two pick wish list, and could it work? Shar, we'll start with you again.
If I was the Toronto Maple Leafs, I would set my sights on the Pittsburgh Penguins. They need to get bad, and they're not going to make the playoffs, and they're not going to compete. They have a 32-year-old Raquel who scores 30 plus every single year. They have a 33-year-old Brian Rust who doesn't make a lot of money, who scores a lot of goals and plays with guys like Sidney Crosby. They have a lot of talent there. They're dangling Malkin right now, who's 38. They're trying to trade Carlson. They're looking for trade partners for a lot of their guys that are in their mid-30s. And if I can get a Ricard Raquel, or if I can get both Ricard Raquel and Brian Rust out of there, that would really line up with this. I would say the Leafs are probably in a 2 to 4 year cup window, and that would line up pretty well. Like they're both of those guys score in some of the toughest places on the ice. They're very gritty. They have a lot of speed, but they can score. I would say Pittsburgh most likely, just because I know Kyle Dubas knows the Leafs farm system well. He knows the players, and he's not really great at making trades, and he's the kind of guy I would look to fleece right now. He makes horrible trades, or
we know this.
and that's the guy I would hone in on. And if you got to move a Carlo to get an Erik Karlsson, I mean, the Leafs have been looking for a power play quarterback for years. It's looking back to a couple of years ago when the whole Marner started killing penalties and he tried to be the power play quarterback. I mean, we saw the Leafs power play struggle to an elite level. People were just baffled by the amount of talent that was on that team, and they couldn't score a power play goal to save their life. And Marner was the power play quarterback for a while when they took Riley off. And then he started killing penalties, and people allotted him for it. But the Leafs power play has never been top 5. I mean, penalty kill has never been top 5 in the NHL or top 10 or anything worth being scared of in the playoffs. I think it's It was bad for the Leafs to try to kill penalties with Matthews, especially since he was hurt all season. It's a lot of extra minutes. It's a lot of extra face-offs. Um, I'm glad that he's gone and they don't have to think about killing penalties with Marner anymore. But yeah, Pittsburgh would be the team.
Thank you. Otis.
Yeah, I think for me, Kadri would be a big deal. Like Kadri and Rust, I would be okay with. But for me, Kadri, when the Leafs traded away Kadri, Kapanen, Connor Brown, they never replaced those guys with guys that have the same type of engine, that have that drive, that are puck hungry, not afraid to forecheck and body check. You can include Hyman in that as well. So I think bringing back Kadri, I think he'd be really motivated. I'm more on the Kadri thing just because I would like to have a second line center or 2A, 2B to kind of reduce John Tavares' minutes, so that Tavares could be fresher for the playoffs. So that's why I would prefer to have a center. It's not going to be easy, but my first choice would be Nazem Kadri, to be honest.
Thank you. JT.
I was going to say Rust. I'm a fan of that guy. If you watch his game, I like his game, and I think he would fit the puzzle really nice. To bring Kadri back, we traded out a lot of guys that we would be looking for now. Our new style of play, look for a Hyman, a Brown, a Kadri. We need those guys. And those guys all got traded away. So we got to bring that style of play back in. I think Kadri would be a good piece to that puzzle if we can get him. I've always been a Kadri fan. I think he got some pretty raw shakes in the playoffs and became the whipping boy of the Leafs fan nation, the Leafs nation. But yeah, I think bring him back. The new style of play, I think it's been brought to the forefront that Toronto has been unevenly penalized for that style of play. So now it's in everyone's eyesight. I think if they brought that stuff back in now, we would get away with it. We could become the next Florida and just walk around and take stupid penalties, but not get penalized for it.
Thank you. Phil.
Yeah, I think also what JT is saying there is maybe getting penalized in the game, but not getting suspensions for 8 and 10 games on ridiculous. Like, I'm sorry, but Bennett could have been suspended 3 times this Stanley Cup run easily. You know what I mean? And and Kadri on the Leafs back in that time, he throws a questionable hit. Sure, it might have been a 5 in a game, a boarding, a shot to the head. Maybe at one game, the guy gets 8 or 10 games. Like he got the whole wrath of the NHL and the player safety board coming down on him. I agree with what the guys have been saying with getting some of the guys out of Pittsburgh. You know what I mean? There's a long list of RFAs out there that we've already talked about. One is McTavish. If some of these younger guys aren't willing to re-sign with their teams and they're going to be holdouts, maybe we can sweeten the pot a little bit with Anaheim or some of the Western teams and be able to sneak some of these guys out of there. Obviously, personally, like the other guys have said, Kadri would be my number one. I think just having that type of gritty player back, that sandpaper at center ice, he can slot in on the power play. He's going to be in the top 6 constantly. And like they said, that gives JT a little bit of a rest as well.
Thank you. And George.
Yeah, right on. I'm right there with JT and Phil. I think Kadri's the guy that we need to bring in, and he's going to be gritty. He's going to, he's not afraid to get in there and start hitting and going after the puck. So I'm a Kadri fan, and let's bring him back.
He can take that second line minutes as well, and give Tavares that break, move him to a third line, so he's not eating up minutes. Yeah.
But I think it's really, I think you have to weigh the pros and cons of let's just say, like, of getting Malkin as a $6.1 million cap. He's got 1 year left on his contract, and the price is going to be much cheaper at 38 years old. Would you take a swing at someone like Malkin to be your second line center, or he can move to the left wing if you really want him to, and be that elite playmaking guy who just, he's huge. If you put him on the left wing with a Matthews and Nylander, I don't know. it would have. I'd have to see what the price for Calgary would be, but at 34 years old with 3 years signed until 2029 at 7.5, you'd really have to weigh the pros and cons of both.
Well, definitely it would come with retention in my mind. Well,
Yeah.
we're going to move on to the guys we have picked up. And Phil, we're going to start with you. Matias Maccelli, Michael Pezzetta, and Nick Roy.
Don't really know a lot about Maccelli. I know that he's had a couple of good 50-point seasons, I believe. If he can come in and bring in speed and some snipe, and you know, what I mean, if he moves around within the top six, maybe even drops down to the third line type thing, and can chip in here or there. Now, Pezzetta, I mean, we've seen the YouTube videos, we've seen the fights against Reeves. We know that like that kid's got a set of cojones on him the size of grapefruits. Like he is not going to put up with anyone's crap. If he's in the lineup, he might take a penalty here or there, or he might get an instigator once or twice or whatever, but at least that's going to hold the other team accountable. And he's not going to slow down the game as much
No
as
more
what
runs at Austin Matthews is what I'm hearing.
But
And-
Pezzetta brings something Lawrence does not have in his body. He's just one of those really nice guys that smiles and he's thankful to be in Toronto, but he won't destroy anybody on the boards.
Yeah.
and he's not going to be as slow as what Reeves is, right? So he's not going to slow
100%.
down or clog up that game.
Okay. Thank you. JT, your thoughts on these three guys?
Roy is gritty. I think he was a good pickup. Maccelli is also very gritty. For he's not a big guy at all, but he is gritty. And Pezzetta, as long as he doesn't take dumb penalties and kind of get away from the game like a Rempe or something like that, because he has the potential to go on that tangent. He's a hothead. He absolutely is. But sometimes you need a hothead, and he might be a good thing just to have sitting on the bench. Maybe he doesn't get the minutes, but like Phil said, he doesn't slow the game down. You put Reeves on. I loved Reeves. I loved the game. I loved he was a force to be reckoned with, but he was a bit of a plug. He was not very fast. Whereas Pezzetta he's got age in his corner, and he's fast. He's got some legs. He can move, and he can be nasty and mean. So yeah, I think all three of those guys were good pickups. I'll be honest, in my opinion. I think they were solid pickups for our game, for our team, but we still need more.
George, your thoughts?
And for me, Pezzetta, he's gonna come in and fill the hole where Simmons and Reeves is gone, and it's gonna take the fight off of Knives, Domi, so they can focus on their games. And I've always been a good advocate for having a bruiser on our side, going out there, and if needs to be. So the other two, I did hear a little bit of stats from both of them, and I'm just gonna say what JT said, that they're both gritty and they're gonna help the team. I like grittiness.
Otis, does Maccelli start with Austin Matthews this season?
I think he does, just because it kind of reminds me of Bunting when Bunting first came to Toronto a couple years back. But I think he's got more skill than Bunting. So yeah, I do think he'll start there, depending on what they do. But I do believe he'll start there when the season starts. And I like the pickups. I think Raw is a perfect third line center. It's slotting down in the fourth line. And Pezzetta, he'll play, but I'm not sure how often he'll play. It really depends on what other moves they make and who they're playing, to be honest. But I like the moves. All great moves for the Leafs.
Thank you. And Shar, who is the most impactful pickup out of the three?
Well, I think people in Toronto are finally going to realize that one-dimensional playmakers are cheap and plentiful in the NHL. I mean, this guy got 40 assists on a team that doesn't score. And you put him on a team with a 60-goal guy, a 40-goal guy in Marner, a 30-goal guy in JT, and Nyes had 29 this year. He's possible to score 30. Then you got a bunch of 20-goal guys behind that. Mitch Marner is going to quickly realize that the amount of assists and second of assists and primaries that he picked up in Toronto won't happen on a lot of other teams because of the amount of scoring that was available. Matias Maccelli, sorry. If he got 40 assists on the Arizona Coyotes, I see him picking up, 50 plus assists this year. And then people are going to see that, guys who hold on to the puck the way he does, I looked into him a lot. This guy was fourth in Calder voting in his rookie year, above a guy like Wyatt Johnston in Dallas, who everybody thinks is the next coming of power forwards. So Wyatt Johnson is an amazing player, and this guy got more Calder votes than him. I think just being in Toronto and being in the East, we don't know a lot about these guys, the lesser players in the West that have talent, but his profile really looks like a guy who holds onto the puck, doesn't throw it away. He'll skate around the zone like the way Nylander does, and just does laps and laps and laps until he finds the guy on the back door and it's a tap in. And if you can do that on the Arizona Coyotes with
Well, you're right.
no real goal scoring, I think he could do much better on the Leafs. But I think Pezzetta and Roy are the type of players that Berube likes. The Leafs turned into a dump and chase team and a hard forechecking team, and these guys are going to forecheck with speed the way that Berube likes.
Thank you. You know what? We are running our time low, so I'm just going to answer my question on Mitch Marner. I believe that he can say what he wants in Vegas, but he's still got to prove that. And you know what? If Jack Eichel, with only 1 year remaining in Vegas, leaves, who the heck is Marner going to set up there anyway? All right, let's get past that part real quick.
All the guys they have on LTIR in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's right. But that window's closing real quick on them. That's going to close on them. All right, so we're just getting right down to our last question here. And let's name your top 3 Stanley Cup contenders for 2025-26. And we'll start with our special guest here today, Shar from TML Domain.
Well, number 1, you got to go with the Florida Panthers. You really can't count them out. They're always going to be there. They're always going to be fighting. As long as Bobrovsky is playing the way that he plays, I think he really anchors that team and builds the confidence that they play with. The other team, I would have to say the Colorado Avalanche. I'd never count them out just because if they get great goaltending the way Florida does, I would never bet against Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar.
Thank you.
And my third wild card team for the Stanley Cup, I would say the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think they've seen the way the Winnipeg Jets played this year, number 1 team in the NHL. Didn't have any superstars, but the team played as a team, and they've really spread out the way they spend their money and the players that they have. And I think the Leafs are building that way too.
Thank you. George, your top 3 Stanley Cup contenders.
Well, I'm going to start off with the Leafs because we're all Leaf fans here. So they're number 1 for me. Definitely not Boston or Montreal. Florida, of course, because it's back to back, and they just re-signed all their guys, and they seem to get away with everything. And then we'll go with well, let's say Calgary.
JT, your 3 top, please.
I'm going to be honest. I think it was the same as this year. Your 2 best teams in the NHL are going to be Florida and Toronto. I think Toronto moves their way through it this year. Yeah, I think they can get past Florida. Hopefully they can. But I see Florida as your number 1, Toronto as your number 2, and whoever comes out of the West, I'm thinking Dallas. Honestly, Dallas, they have all the pieces. There's 4 lines of fury and no superstars, but they got 4 lines. So as long as they can get goaltending, I think Vottinger can do his job and Murray can back him up. I think Dallas is a solid contender on the West, and I think it's going to come down between Toronto and Florida in the East again.
Thank you. Otis.
I'd say Florida, still number 1. 2, I think Dallas as well. And I think people are underestimating the Edmonton Oilers. I know they lost some players, but losing Zach Hyman for the finals hurt them, I think. I still think that the Oilers are still going to be a dynamic team. So I have, those are my 3. Florida, Dallas, and Edmonton.
Phil.
We're all on the same page here. Let's be honest. You know what I mean? When Florida can re-sign their guys, they've won back-to-back. They get away with what they get away with. It's hard to say that they're not going to be one of the best teams in the NHL again. Again, Toronto. If, like JT said, if we can beat Florida, then I don't. No disrespect to a lot of the other teams in the East, but I don't see a lot of resistance coming from some of those other teams. From the West, Edmonton, they're not done, obviously. They're going to be picking up some pieces just to make their team better as well. They didn't do overly well during the free agent signing. Dallas agreed, Colorado agreed, but guys, Corey Perry went to the LA Kings. They're going to the finals. He goes every year. The guy buys tickets for his family in September because he knows he's going to be there in June. LA Kings going to the finals, baby.
You know what? That would be nice if they can get past Edmonton and for Kings fans. But I think Edmonton might have something burning in the back burner and want Carter Hart coming in to man their net. Wouldn't that be something? I know that could be a whole new podcast on our thoughts on that, and maybe it will be. All right, guys, that's all the time we have for today. I want to thank everyone for coming out on such a beautiful summer day here in Toronto, and I'm sure it's that nice in Thunder Bay and Calgary, and even in parts unknown Durham where Phil is.
Hot as hell out here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
There you go. Thank you so much again to our panel, George, JT, and Phil. Thank you for joining me again. Our special guest with frequent flyer miles, Otis from Sportstalkinthesix, and our new guest and special guest, Shar from TML Domain.
Thanks
you
for
guys,
having.
and have a great summer. And we'll all be back, and you guys are welcome to
Go Blue Jays
again come training camp. Yeah, and go Blue Jays. Wow.
Yeah.
Them Jays.
And maybe we should start talking Blue Jays, guys. If any of us are interested in that, we can maybe jump back on here and follow the Blue Jays along as well. Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
Enjoy the rest of your day, guys.
Everyone.